Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee, and this is another COMSEC Practices video. For today's video, I want to talk about the subject of brevity in communications. What we're talking about here is keeping your comms as short as humanly possible. And there's a number of different reasons why you want to do this. Now, the first of which is, and this is just a solid practice, whether we're talking COMSEC or whether we're talking emergency communications in general, is keeping your transmissions clear, concise, accurate, and to the point is an important thing, because the longer you talk, the longer you're tying up the band. And so long as you're tying up those airwaves, other people cannot respond to you, ask you for relevant information, give you direction, etc. So you want to keep your communications very short, and you want to communicate only when possible. That whole thing of don't speak until spoken to, well, it's sort of that principle. Especially from a communications security standpoint, the more you talk, the more you chatter, the more that you're displaying activity. So if people are monitoring and looking for activity on the radio, there's a number of different ways they can do this, one of which, particularly at the lower levels of sophistication, it may just be the simple act of scanning, either on a scanner or a transceiver, and running it through scan cycle and scanning, the bands that are commonly used to detect activity and then monitor that activity. That's one way, and brevity communications can really help you there, because every radio, when it's in its scan cycle, there's a measurable amount of time that it requires to cycle through the entire scan range. If your comms are real short, down to a couple of seconds, you may very well find yourself in the loop, so to speak, so that the radio's still looping and it hasn't even had a chance to come back to the frequency or arrive on the frequency that you're transmitting on. So it can be difficult for them to detect your radio activity. Now, if they're a little bit higher level of sophistication, they may be using a waterfall. And what this is a graphical display, and you'll have kind of a baseline, and any time there's radioactivity within the range that's being displayed, you'll see an actual spike, and it'll indicate a frequency where radioactivity is occurring. Now, if those spikes are only a couple of seconds in duration, that doesn't really indicate a high level of activity, so to speak. So if the spikes are infrequent and they're very short, you could even dismiss those as just simple, glitches in the system, or just some kind of errant radio traffic going on, and you may not pick that up as actual activity that would concern you. But when you see a lot of activity on the bands and they're staying there for a little bit, that's activity that you might want to pay attention to. Now, if you zero in on that frequency, and perhaps you're using encryption, you see a lot of activity, and then you see that that activity is encrypted in some manner. That shows a level of sophistication, and you start rising in the order of priority of someone who needs to be paid attention to. So again, keeping those communications short, using the radio only when absolutely necessary, important skills to develop. So that's kind of it really in terms of brevity. But like I say, keep those comms short, and there are other reasons that relate to that one, and I'll talk separately on the subject of avoiding direction finding, because brevity is an important factor there. But just to give a little bit of a preview of what I'm going to be talking about there. The longer you talk on the radio, the easier you are to triangulate and locate, whether it's a non-governmental operation or a government operation. Some government operations have very sophisticated equipment to detect you, and the signal doesn't need to be that long. But if you're doing it the old-fashioned way of using, people on foot or in vehicles with radios and setting up to get your signal, again, the more you're talking on a given frequency from a static position, that definitely increases your chances of being located. So again, you don't want to, it's not time to rag chew during times of stress and conflict. So I will go ahead and bring it to a close at that point. I think I've covered this topic, talked about all I need to talk about. How about that? So I'll bring it to an end. Thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.